The New Jersey Devils have won 4 in a row, and they're battling the Washington Capitals for first place in the Metropolitan Division as the Capitals continue to win without Alex Ovechkin. And meanwhile, the Calgary Flames look to build on a shutout win over the defending Stanley Cup champions. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New Jersey Devils, Trey Matthews. And Trey, 2 in a row now for the Devils. They do just keep on winning and competing in that Metropolitan Division. What has been the biggest difference this year as compared to last year for these Devils?
There's a whole lot of things you can point to, but I think the biggest thing is that Sheldon Keefe is really clicking with the players and he's utilizing them to the best of their abilities. A big example that I talked about in one of my more recent episodes is that he's entrusting Jack Hughes in more penalty kill situations. Now, when you think of Jack Hughes, you don't think of him on the PK or being a help defensively, but that's exactly what Sheldon Keefe is trying to do. He's trying to elevate Jack Hughes' game, take it to the next level. And after the game, Sheldon Keefe spoke highly of the trust he has in Jack, and it was reciprocal on Jack's end. I think that's just the biggest example of the chemistry being really good, the trust being there, the system being in play. Devils got off to a slow start to the season, but that was bound to happen because they brought in a lot of players to try to shake up the roster, new head coach, new system. Obviously, you got to start a new goalie in Jakob Markstrom. The Devils are just starting to click, and I think the biggest thing from this year compared to last year is that they at least walk away with something more times than not. So you talked about them winning 2 in a row, but let's go back to the Toronto Maple Leafs game back on Tuesday. They lost in OT. Austin Matthews had a game-winning goal, but at least they walked away with something.
And those points do add up. As someone who covers the Islanders, I am well aware of how, those overtime and shootout losses can add up. One, you talked about Jakob Markstrom. What impact has the improved goaltending had on the Devils this season?
I just want to say this. I think Jakob Markstrom deserves a lot more respect because let's just look at last season, the tandem of Vitek Vanecek and Akira Schmid and Nico Dawes every now and again. It wasn't really all that good. And it really started to change when Fitzy brought in Jake Allen at the trade deadline. That's when the Devils' goaltending started to improve. And I think people are very spoiled by the fact that the Devils have better goaltending, that when they don't have a good outing, they're just like, oh, they're bad, or they're not really all this or that. I'm just like, Jakob Markstrom is second in the NHL in wins. Take it how you want to take it, but that's not an easy thing to do. And yes, he lets in a few soft goals here or there, but look, I all wins count the same in the end. So if the Devils win 3-1, I really don't care if they get a shutout. I really don't. And that might be a hot take, but at least on my end, I care more about getting the 2 points than I do getting the shutout. And I think Jakob Markstrom has done a phenomenal job. It's not perfect, but it's a work in progress. And I even said it that I'm glad that he's representing Team Sweden in 4 Nations. I was talking to Haley Simon of Locked On Blues about this when we collaborated on a respective crossover. I was just like, look, I think Jakob Markstrom deserves some more recognition, and I think he's having a pretty good year. Why not have him represent Team Sweden at the 4 Nations face-off?
Yeah, and definitely that is a good thing and some recognition for him. One thing this team has struggled with a little bit in some games recently is slow starts, falling behind a little bit early. What's been going on with that, and how are they going to try to address that?
It's really hard. We tried asking Sheldon Keefe that question a couple days ago, but the reality of it is like it's just a matter of circumstance, but how you respond, that's what makes a team. So the Devils were notoriously known for sacrificing the first goal last year more times than not. And unfortunately, it resulted in many losing streaks, like losing 3 in a row or being very inconsistent. So, but this time around, they're able to come back. And in the previous game against the Chicago Blackhawks, they went down 1-0, and then in the third period, they caught lightning in a bottle. It was an onslaught of goals, just great, fast paced hockey like we love to see. So, I mean, as long as they can amount the comeback and just say, look, we're down, but we're not out. Like I said, similar to the shutout thing, I don't think it's that big a deal, but even Sheldon Keefe doesn't really have an answer to that.
One guy who I think doesn't get enough attention for what he adds to the lineup is Jasper Bratt. And every time I've watched the Devils, he just has a really good game. He's always seemingly productive and in the thick of things. Talk to me about what he's meant to this team so far this year.
That's an excellent point, Gil. Like people talk about Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, but I feel as though Jasper Bratt is one of the more underrated players in the NHL because take a guess. Who do you think is leading the Devils in points? It's not Jack Hughes. It's Jasper Bratt.
Yeah.
Who's leading the Devils in assists? It's Jasper Bratt. And he's second on the team in goals, 3-way tie with Jack Hughes and Stefan Noesen. I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card, Stefan Noesen being second on the Devils in goals, but digressing a little bit. Jasper Bratt, for the past couple seasons, has been really good and consistent. He plays in all the games. He plays with great speed. I don't understand why he can't get more recognition. He was named an all-star last year. He got to represent the Devils at the all-star game, albeit it was to replace the injured Jack Hughes, but it still shouldn't take away from the fact that he is a really good player and deserves more recognition. And a few years ago, he bet on himself to take a one-year deal and show to the front office, like, my one good year was not a fluke. I am very capable of doing it again. And case in point, he did it again. Now he's locked up long term. So my thing is, yes, Jasper Bratt definitely deserves some more recognition, if you ask me.
We're getting closer to the midpoint of this NHL season. What do you think the Devils are going to look to do as we get closer to the trade deadline?
I think they just need some more depth on their bottom six because there are times where they're just a little too top heavy. But Nathan Bastian recently came back into the lineup after being out because he had his jaw bashed in by Ryan Lomberg in a not so fair fight. But Curtis Lazar is also out for an extended period of time, but he's back to practicing. And I said, losing those two players, while they don't contribute the most, they definitely add you a couple more bodies. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I was speaking to Chico Resch about this. I'm sure a fellow you're very familiar with, former Islanders player, former Stanley Cup champion as well. I asked Chico, I was like, do you think they're Stanley Cup contenders? He thinks like they're definitely going to go to the playoffs if all goes well, barring anything catastrophic happening. But are they there in terms of being championship contenders? Maybe not yet, but they're very close. And I think, at least on my end, maybe getting some more scoring on your bottom six can help just a little bit more. We saw that with the Stefan Noesen, Eric Haula, and Paul Cotter line. But Stefan Noesen, more times than not, he's going to be paired alongside Nico Hischier. He deserved that promotion. And now, like I said, Sheldon Keefe is trying anything he can to just give that bottom six some more pop.
All right, that'll be something to keep an eye on as we head closer and closer to that trade deadline. Trey, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You can find me at TreyMatt4 on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. You can find Locked On Devils wherever you get your podcast from, both available on podcast streaming services and also YouTube.
All right, Trey, thanks so much.
Thank you, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app and you can see a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you could check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And hockey fans, use your knowledge of the game of hockey and your favorite team to find exciting bets on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Capitals, Dan Holmi. And Dan, a great time for Capitals fans. 4 wins in a row, only 6 goals against, and somehow they're doing it all without Alex Ovechkin. What have been some of the reasons that this team has just kept on winning even without Ovi in the lineup?
Well, one of the biggest pieces for sure has been Tom Wilson. He has stepped up in Alex Ovechkin's absence. And like I spoke about here in the pre-interview with you here, that I think he's going to be the future captain of this team, as we saw him put up 2 goals against the Sabres last night. So a lot of people were thinking that the Capitals were going to be waving the white flag when Ovechkin got injured, but this team has been playing very well in his absence.
Seems like Tom Wilson has sort of added another dimension to his game. You know, I've seen leadership off the ice, but on the ice, he just seems to be taking it to a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's doing this all with the big aquarium that he's wearing over the front there after he sustained that injury after Jakob Chikrin knocked and hit the puck right off his face. And, that kind of just speaks volumes about Tom Wilson in general, is that his face was puffed out to here. And most guys, I think that would have sent them to the locker room, and that's all you would have seen for the rest of the game. But what did he do in that game? Is he came out in that game, scored 2 more goals. So, if there was any questions about what kind of leader that Tom Wilson is, I think it's been answered in Alex Ovechkin's absence, and has been huge. But, it hasn't just been Tom Wilson. There's been a lot of other players that have stepped up as well.
Talk to me about Connor McMichael, now tied for the team lead in goals with Alex Ovechkin. He has 15. What has he meant to this team?
It's been huge. And, there for the last couple years, he was on the big team, the Capitals, and then got sent down to Hershey. And a couple summers ago, I said it needed to be the year of Connor McMichael, and it has been. And I would say the biggest steps of growth that we've seen from him is that he was playing for a good chunk of this season with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and serving up those sweet passes to Connor McMichael, and ultimately what has been successful for the team. But Connor McMichael has been successful in that, but if you want to take a look at the team in general, the team has been successful because they've been doing the things that have been successful in the league for years, and that is driving for the net and setting up in front of the net. You take a look at the game last night in particular, a lot of redirects, a lot of deflections that hang out in front of the net, and a lot of good things will happen.
Talk to me a little about Alexei Protas. It's not a name that a lot of people know, and yet, third on the team right now with 26 points.
Yeah, has been absolutely huge for the Capitals. And he was a guy that came to the team a couple summers ago. And I don't think there was a lot of plans for him to be on the team, but he played so well in camp, he earned a spot on the team. And this year has even taken his game to yet another level. And I think that primarily that is because you've seen him playing on the top line with some truly great players. And it was interesting. It was a bit of a head scratcher for me, I got to be honest with you, that he was slated to start the season on the third line, and we have seen him at points playing on the top line. So I think it's the chemistry with his line mates, that kind of thing, that I think has really jump-started his career and his season. And it's an exciting team right now to watch, and Alexei Protas is a very big part of the team's success.
Can't ignore what Logan Thompson has done this year. 12, 1, and 2 in between the pipes, a 2.45 goals against, a 9.13 save percentage. What has he meant to this team's success so far this season?
Yeah, has been absolutely clutch for this team. And it's an interesting thing. Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson came to this team last summer and has been huge. And when the Capitals need a netminder in net to make big saves, he does that game in and game out. He moves very well in the crease. He's very confident. And ultimately, I think he's playing for an extension, as we know that both Charlie and Logan are in contract years, and it's bringing out the best of both of those netminders. But I think that Logan Thompson in particular has taken the reins, as I'm going to say right now, the number one netminder for the Capitals. There was a lot of people that were excited about Charlie last summer and what we saw from him last season, but Logan Thompson has really risen to the challenge and taken this team to the next level due to great play in net.
What is the timetable right now for Alex Ovechkin? How much longer until we see him? And I'm assuming they don't need to rush him back with the team playing as well as it is.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, he is chasing down Gretzky here, right? 27 away from doing that. And of course, we want to take care of that whole situation. So it was 4 to 6 weeks from the original injury, of course, with McBain, that lower leg injury, that fibula injury. Just really happy that it wasn't a knee injury, I guess, at the end of the day. But towards the end of December, what they're saying is late December, early January is when we'll see him in. And we're already seeing him at practice. He's getting in work already. It was shortly after the injury, honestly, that we saw him skating at MedStar Ice Complex. So I think that everything is on track. I don't think he's going to be back earlier. I know there's a lot of Capitals fans that are like, wow, the guy's skating around out there. He must be coming back real soon. But to your point there, I think that they don't need to rush. Of course, we want Ovechkin in the lineup. He helps the team play that much better. But with how great this team is playing, I don't think there is that need to rush him. And the Capitals are in a unique position. But ultimately, we want the captain back in the lineup sooner than later.
Name for me a couple of unsung heroes that have made this team's success possible this year.
Well, one name really pops out, and that is Ivan Miroshnichenko, who plays on the fourth line primarily, a guy that has had to overcome a lot of different obstacles, had that Hodgkin's lymphoma, that went into remission, terminated his KHL contract, came over here, and has been a huge piece for the Capitals, either on the big team or down in Hershey. So he has been a really big piece. And I think that, I've often dubbed him as Alex Ovechkin 2.0. He has a lot of those same characteristics. That is one name in particular, I think, that has really popped off the page. But it's just a lot of the different moves that have been made over the summer. We've seen Radish take his game to the next level. Duhaime has done a really good job for the Caps as well. So, I think that Miroshnichenko would probably be the name along, like you mentioned earlier, Protas, which is a name that's not super familiar with non-Capitals fans, but those are two players that have definitely helped take the Capitals to great things. Take a look at the team, the most points in the Eastern Conference. Who saw that coming?
Yeah, it wasn't on a lot of people's bingo cards heading into the season, but what for you is the biggest concern? I mean, things are going well, first place, most points in the conference. What's your biggest cause for concern for this team right now?
Sustainability. That's the biggest thing, of course. And then injuries that we can't plan for. Those are the things that oftentimes can derail your team. And, the Capitals have found a way to dig deep in Alex Ovechkin's absence. It makes me wonder what would happen, if they were dealt with, a few different injuries. Do they have the depth to overcome? So injuries by far are the things that have me the most concerned. But I'm optimistic just in light of what this team has been able to do minus Ovechkin, that I think that they can weather any storm. There has been times this season that they've struggled a bit with special teams, but that seems to be addressed as well. There's not a whole lot of things that have me concerned about this team, but injuries are the biggest thing in the back of my mind. That what would happen if Logan Thompson got injured? What if a couple forwards got injured? You take a look at what that meant when John Carlson got injured a couple seasons ago. So as long as this team can stay healthy, I think that there is no team in the NHL that I'm afraid of them facing.
Wow. All right, Dan, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And of course, the podcast is available on YouTube and ultimately wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, Dan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved people a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Flames, Jess Belmosto. And Jess, pretty nice win over the weekend for the Flames. They shut out the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and they do it with a different goalie. Talk to me about that big win.
Yeah, it is quite the opposite of what we had seen earlier in the week in the 8-3 loss against Tampa. So, Dustin Wolf has been phenomenal at home all season long, and he bounced back, I would say, Saturday night after the win, just because he had been struggling on the road and Vladar had gotten a bunch of starts and you hadn't seen Wolf. So for him to, find some comfort in his crease again and reclaim it was very nice. And it was actually nice to see the Flames actually score more than 2 goals. So we'll take it.
What did they do differently that led to the increase in scoring?
This is going to sound so cliche, but honestly, just shooting the puck. They have really struggled this season and really the last 2 seasons under Ryan Huska. They get too much in their head and they're playing too tight of a game where they're overpassing. They don't have the confidence to shoot, or they're misreading plays and creating turnovers. So I really think that whatever conversations were had after the game against Tampa, were effective because it was polar opposites.
Talk to me about Nazem Kadri. He has been red hot lately.
I cannot believe that Nazem Kadri is producing the way that he's producing, and just the level of skill and talent it takes to do it as effortless as he does and makes it seem. He has been a huge part of this Flames offense, and obviously as a veteran and a part of the leadership group, that's huge too. He's taken some of the younger players under his wing as well, and I think it's great that, they can count on him as part of their offense, but also just consistently looking to him for, kind of like mentorship as well.
Give me the name of a player who has sort of quietly been helping this team succeed this season.
Ooh, I would say Kevin Rooney. And people are just going to say, well, he's just a fourth line center. Yes, that is correct. But he has been fantastic on the Flames penalty kill. And that has been the Flames' biggest weakness this season. He's not afraid to go out there and throw himself in front of pucks, block any shot he needs to, and just really get down deep and play the defensive game. And I think that the role of the fourth line has shifted in the NHL even over the last 3 to 5 years. So to be able to count on your fourth line for more than just going out there to eat up 10, 11 minutes a night is nice.
What about the penalty kill? Because they have struggled throughout the season. How do they improve it? Do they need to bring in new personnel, or, is there a strategy they need to try?
I think the biggest strategy would be for them to not commit any penalties, because we knew that this year the penalty kill was going to be tough because they lost Chris Tanev. Chris Tanev was the glue that held the Flames penalty kill together for all those years. And, when you lose such a big defensive asset like him, you have gaps to fill, and the Flames don't necessarily have players that can equal a Chris Tanev. And I think they have really, I don't think that they have, at least right now on their current roster, a real solution for it. I think you just have to go out there and give it your best effort. They don't necessarily have that it factor.
The other issue that I can see from the outside here is secondary scoring. How do you pick up that? And again, are there people in the minor league system or on the roster right now who can help, or do you need to add?
So I think it would make more sense for the Flames to keep it kind of in-house. There are definitely prospects with the Wranglers that I would say have deserved this call up for a long time. Walker Dewar and Jacob Pelletier were called up earlier this month and have been fantastic. Both have been on the score sheet multiple times, and just you see the difference when they're on the ice. Rory Kearns has been leads the AHL in scoring, I believe, and he hasn't made his NHL debut yet. And it's kind of like a matter of, okay, when is this going to happen? Because it feels like you're missing an opportunity if you don't give him this chance. And I think with the uncertainty around Andrei Kuzmenko and his injury and just healthy scratching him in general, is there an opportunity to bring him up and, give Kearns just a shot?
So here we are. We're getting close to the halfway mark of the season. We've seen the Flames play really well for stretches and struggle mightily for stretches. What does it take to get a little more consistency on this roster and make a run for a playoff spot? Or do you think that's not a realistic expectation?
I don't think the playoffs are a realistic goal for this team. Unfortunately, I know that every team pretty much goes into the season saying, the goal is to make the playoffs. The goal is to win the cup. But the Flames know what type of position they're in and what they need to do in order to be a competitive team. And Craig Conroy has come in and, made it pretty clear that they're going to have to acquire players and high talent through the draft rather than trades and free agency. So I don't want to say they're, tanking, because you're never going to convince these athletes to like lose on purpose. But I don't necessarily think it's a good idea for them to try to go be buyers for the trade deadline and just attempt to make a playoff run. It makes no sense right now.
So if the plan is to look toward the future, who may be available at the trade deadline when we get there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say obviously Andrei Kuzmenko, who is an expiring free agent. Dan Vladar, I know a lot of teams have. I thought that the Avalanche were going to potentially call on him for a trade. And then those two, I would say, are probably your more than likely, and maybe Rasmus Anderson. I know that they've kind of shot that down, but I mean, if the package is right, I don't see a world where you are holding back.
Should be interesting, Jess. I know you'll have it covered every step of the way. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yes. So you can find Locked On Flames wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Flames. And you can follow me on Twitter, X, Blue Sky, at Jess Belmosto, and see really cute pictures of my cat and see me complain about the Flames penalty kill.
All right. I don't know which one of those would be my favorite, but I look forward to both. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thanks, Gil.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank my guest, Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils, Dan Holmi of Locked On Capitals, and Jess Belmosto of Locked On Flames for joining me today. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we are here at Locked On NHL every day, Monday through Friday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the NHL with the help of our local experts. And now we have a new Saturday show, the Women's Hockey Spotlight, so make sure you check that out as well. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.